The Young and the Restless Spoilers. Sienna had not slept since the moment she learned that Matt was no longer free. The news did not arrive cleanly or directly, but rather seeped through whispers, fragmented intelligence, and the kind of quiet panic that only follows when powerful men begin moving pieces without leaving fingerprints behind. Jack had him. That much was certain. What was far more disturbing were the rumors that followed immediately after rumors that Jack was not acting alone, that Victor's name kept surfacing in the same breath, that some kind of exchange was being negotiated behind closed doors. A trade. A calculated transaction. A life weighed against leverage. Sienna tried to convince herself that she was still an outsider to whatever game was being played, that her concern was purely emotional, driven by fear and unresolved loyalty. But the truth pressed harder with every passing hour. People were already asking the question she could not silence in her own mind. Was Sienna still Matt's ally, or had she always been something else entirely? The whispers grew crueler, suggesting that everything unfolding was nothing more than a perfectly rehearsed performance, a carefully staged illusion designed to mislead everyone watching from the outside. If Jack and Victor were negotiating, then where did that leave her? And worse, what if she and Matt were not victims of the game at all, but co-authors of it? The doubt was corrosive. Sienna understood how easily perception could be manipulated, how history could be rewritten by those with enough power to survive long enough to tell it. To some, it already looked unthinkable yet strangely convincing. Sienna and Matt as silent partners, allies bound not by desperation, but by design. The idea itself was horrifying, not because it was entirely false, but because it carried just enough plausibility to destroy whatever truth remained. Sienna knew that appearances were dangerous, but she also knew something far more important. Matt was in real danger. Whatever deal Jack believed he was controlling, whatever assurances Victor may or may not have offered, none of it erased the fact that Jack had crossed a line from manipulation into cruelty. Matt had been taken, broken down, and hidden away like an object that could be bent until it served its purpose. Sienna's fear sharpened into resolve, and when night finally fell, it did not bring rest. It brought action. The house was silent when she arrived, the kind of silence that only exists in places where confidence has replaced caution. Jack believed himself untouchable. The security system was advanced, layered, designed to intimidate more than deter, and Sienna had studied it carefully. She moved through the darkness with precision, every step measured, every breath controlled, until the faint, inevitable sound of the security alert broke the stillness. Somewhere inside, a soft chime escalated into a warning. Jack woke instantly. Years of paranoia had trained him well enough to recognize danger even before he fully understood it. But recognition was not enough. Sienna was already inside. When he reached for control, for authority, for the illusion that his power would protect him even now, he found only chaos. The confrontation was brief and brutal. Sienna did not hesitate. The gunshot echoed sharply through the house, tearing through the quiet, and Jack collapsed as the bullet tore into his leg. The pain was immediate, overwhelming, and humiliating. He screamed, not just from the injury, but from the sudden realization that control had slipped entirely out of his hands. She did not look back. Her focus was elsewhere, deeper inside the nightmare Jack had created. Matt was not in a room, not restrained by chains in any dramatic display of villainy, but locked inside a cold iron cage, reduced to something less than human by design. The sight of him nearly broke her resolve. His injuries were extensive, his body bearing the marks of systematic torment rather than impulsive violence. Jack had not wanted him dead. He had wanted him compliant. Sienna grabbed the metal rods she had prepared and brought them down again and again against the lock, each strike echoing with urgency and fury. The sound was deafening, raw, almost primitive, but she did not stop until the mechanism finally gave way. The door swung open, and Matt collapsed forward, barely conscious, his strength long since drained by pain and deprivation. She caught him before he hit the floor. Up close, the damage was worse. Bruises layered over older bruises, cuts poorly treated, the unmistakable signs of prolonged torture carried out with intent. Jack had wanted information, obedience, perhaps leverage in whatever twisted bargain he believed he was negotiating. Sienna felt a cold clarity settle over her. Whatever doubts existed about her loyalty, whatever theories others were constructing about secret alliances and staged betrayals, none of it mattered now. This was real. The blood was real. The suffering was real. And Jack was responsible. Behind them, Jack's cries echoed through the house, desperate, furious, pleading. He screamed for help, for mercy, for someone to hear him, but the walls offered no comfort. The cameras kept recording, indifferent witnesses to the collapse of the man who once believed himself untouchable. No one came. No one answered. The world did not rush to save him the way it had so often bent to his will before. His voice faded into the background, swallowed by the same darkness he had used to hide his crimes. In that moment, time itself seemed to move on without him, reducing his authority, his schemes, his carefully constructed dominance into something already slipping toward memory. Sienna helped Matt to his feet, every movement slow and deliberate, knowing that escape would be painful and dangerous, but also knowing that staying meant death. Together they moved into the night, leaving behind the house, the cage, the illusion of order Jack had built so carefully. The air outside felt unreal, too open to free, but they did not stop. Every step carried them further from captivity and deeper into uncertainty. Behind them, Jack lay bleeding, his fate unresolved, suspended between survival and consequence. Was he dying? Would he be found? Would Victor intervene to preserve a valuable asset? Or would Jack become another discarded piece in a game that had already moved beyond him? No one knew. Not even Sienna. What was certain was that nothing could ever return to what it had been. Sienna and Matt disappeared into the darkness together, not as symbols, not as conspirators in some elaborate deception, but as two people bound by trauma, survival, and a truth far more dangerous than any rumor. Whether the world would see them as allies, manipulators, or fugitives no longer mattered. The game had changed. And somewhere behind them, Jack's screams faded completely, leaving only silence, questions, and the terrifying possibility that the past was not finished with any of them yet. Sienna did not stop running until the world behind her dissolved into distance and exhaustion. The night swallowed her movements as she dragged Matt's broken body through streets and shadows, finally reaching a place that existed only because she had never fully trusted anyone. Not even herself. The hideout was crude but sealed, a forgotten space meant for emergencies she had always hoped would never arrive. Matt's condition was worse than she had allowed herself to see while escaping. Once the adrenaline faded, the reality of his injuries crashed down with brutal clarity. His breathing was shallow, his body trembling under the weight of trauma that went far beyond physical pain. Sienna worked with shaking hands, cleaning wounds she knew should have been treated in a hospital, knowing that exposure would be just as lethal as infection. Every moment was a gamble, every decision balanced between saving his life and destroying her own. As the hours stretched into days, Matt drifted in and out of consciousness, suspended between survival and collapse, while Sienna remained awake, trapped in a far more dangerous battle. The silence of the hideout became unbearable, filled not with peace but with memory. She had always told herself that what she buried in the past was contained, controlled, sealed away as completely as this room was meant to be. But watching Matt breathe, knowing why she had truly risked everything to save him, forced her to confront the truth she had been running from for years. This was never just about loyalty or guilt or even fear of Jack. This was about a secret so dark and so precise that it had shaped every choice she made afterward. The realization hollowed her out. She was not a rescuer acting out of love or courage. She was a woman desperately protecting the last fragile structure holding her life together. When Matt finally woke fully, the confrontation was inevitable. There was no tenderness in his eyes, no gratitude, only calculation sharpened by pain. Sienna understood then that survival had not softened him, it had refined him. She did not try to lie. Lies had already destroyed too much. Instead, she spoke the truth she had never intended to share, her voice steady only because she could not afford to let it break. She told him why she had come for him, why she had faced a gun, why she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. He was alive because he carried something far more valuable than his own life. He carried proof. Proof of a crime she had committed long ago. A crime so severe that it would not merely ruin her but detonate everything connected to it. The past she revealed was not vague or abstract. It was specific, deliberate, and rooted directly in the history of the Newman family. It was an act that could not be reframed as misunderstanding or accident, an action that had altered lives, set consequences in motion, and waited patiently for the moment it would be exposed. Matt listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable, but Sienna felt the weight of his silence pressing down on her more heavily than any accusation. She explained that the evidence he possessed was undeniable, meticulously preserved, immune to denial or reinterpretation. If revealed, it would erase her identity, her relationships, and any future she could imagine. Yet even that was not the worst of it. The true terror lay in what the truth would do to Noah. The connection was direct, inescapable, and lethal. Once the secret surfaced, Noah would not simply be emotionally devastated, he would be targeted. The fallout would place him in immediate danger, dragging him into a chain reaction he had no knowledge of and no defense against. Saying his name aloud nearly shattered her composure. Everything she had endured, every compromise, every moral erosion had been justified by one desperate need, to keep him safe. She begged Matt then, not with hysteria but with raw honesty, telling him about her love for Noah, about the future she had tried to build around him like armor, about the unbearable thought of being the reason his life was destroyed. She asked him to keep silent, to let the past remain buried, to understand that revealing the truth would not restore justice but create more victims. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to hope that survival had carved some humanity into him, that he might see her not as leverage, but as someone already condemned by her own choices. Matt did not respond the way she hoped. His gaze hardened, and when he finally spoke, his words carried the cold certainty of someone who understood power intimately. He did not deny her fear. He did not dismiss her love. He simply made it clear that silence was never free. The evidence was his shield now, his weapon, his insurance against a world that had tried to cage and break him. He would keep it hidden for now, but not out of mercy. He laid out his conditions with unsettling calm, demands that were deliberately open-ended, designed to evolve, ensuring that Sienna would never feel secure again. He did not need to articulate every future request. The threat itself was enough. Compliance would be ongoing, absolute, unquestioned. In that moment, Sienna understood that rescue had not ended her nightmare. It had transformed it. She was no longer running from exposure, but living inside it, every breath contingent on Matt's restraint. The roles had reversed completely. She had freed him from a cage of iron, only to step willingly into one built from obligation and terror. The realization stripped away any remaining illusions about control. She agreed because refusal was unthinkable. Noah's safety demanded submission. The secret demanded silence. Her life demanded obedience. As days passed, the weight of the bargain settled into permanence. Sienna moved through the world knowing that every choice now belonged partly to Matt, that every future moment carried the risk of collapse. The fate of Noah and the Newman family no longer rested in courts or boardrooms or public scandal, but in a private, volatile negotiation between two people bound by shared destruction. What had once been a hidden crime had become a living, breathing threat reshaping alliances, motives, and destinies. Somewhere beyond the walls of the hideout, the Newman empire continued to function, unaware that its stability now hinged on a secret exchange forged in blood, fear, and silence. And that the most dangerous battle ahead would not be fought with power or money, but with the unbearable cost of keeping the truth buried just a little longer.